Hi, Phil. Hey, Patricia. I see Patricia.
Uh-huh.
I see Veronica and
I see Vicky.
Are we all on
can
auto?
they hear? Hi,
Wonderful.
Laura.
Hi, welcome everybody.
Oh, welcome.
Hi.
Yeah,
Hey,
good to
who's
see
this?
everybody.
I can't see the.
Yeah, I just want to say that you had a poem in the Taos Journal of International Poetry and Art, and
Oh,
I was the co-editor of it.
oh, wow. Thank you.
So that was a while back.
Yeah, right. Yes, yes. Hi, thank you.
You're
So,
welcome.
yeah, you look
Well,
well.
hello everybody. Hi.
Hey, Patricia.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, how are you? I've been
I'm
this
in my
like,
robe, but I'm here.
Oh, Phil Richards. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Veronica. How are you? Hi.
Hi. Hi.
Hi,
Yeah,
Tim.
Veronica.
Great.
Yeah.
okay, this
Well, I
is
think we're all here
nice.
now.
Such
Well, I'm going to
a,
go ahead and begin and start. I'm going to read a short introduction about Ping, and then we're going to start a little conversation, and then we're going to hear some poetry, and then we're going to open it up for some questions. So I'm glad everyone's here. I'm Brad Wetzler, and I'm a board member at Writing for Peace, and I'm excited for this evening. So let me just begin with a little bit of an introduction. I know a lot of you already know her, but Wang Ping is a writer, photographer, and multimedia artist whose work celebrates the beauty and whimsy of life and also documents our capacity to be inhumane to each other. She has written 3 books of poetry, 2 short story collections, and 2 novels. Her life and work clearly transcends the title writer. She is an artist whose medium is life itself. A photographer and multimedia artist, she is known for bold political statements. She writes about the disorientation of being an immigrant and themes of alienation, detachment, and loss. Yet she also infuses her work with spirited affirmations about the beauty that each moment contains. I had the chance to interview her last year for a piece in the Writing for Peace anthology, and I'm excited to be here. And so let's just start with, she was born in Shanghai. Let me just go ahead and finish a bit. Born in Shanghai in 1957, Ping earned her BA at Beijing University, worked on a rural commune for 3 years, moved to the US in 1986, and earned her PhD in comparative literature at NYU. So, Ping, good to see you.
great to see you, and great to see everyone. And it's like poetry family, poetry house.
It is fun. Tell me where you are right now.
I'm in St. Paul, Minnesota, and what you see is my backyard. And this COVID-19 thing allowed me to really tend my garden. So yeah, I admire my plants every day. It's my meditation.
Yeah.
And, yeah, they're becoming just so beautiful.
And you just mentioned, we just talked a little bit earlier, you just come from the river.
Yes, I just wrote 10,000 meters. And so, yeah, that is my deepest meditation. A lot of poetry came out of those rowing, usually I do like for 1,000 meters, 10,000 meters, I do over 1,000, like 1,000 strokes. So.
And what else are you doing right now to stay grounded and creative during this period?
Well, I try to write a few hours every day and I've been practicing 2 Chinese classic dances and also maintain the flamenco dances. And too bad my voice lesson teacher moved to California. And so, yeah, and then just tend my garden and tend my sons, right? And when my son was little, like 2 and 3 weeks old, I started teaching and at McAllen. And I don't know, I just felt I did not give them enough attention. And now I can give them full attention. So we've been cooking and laughing, You know, I've been trying to teach them how to enjoy food and how to cook and how to take care of themselves.
Nice.
And because food is extremely important. We are what we eat, right? You know. So, and I've been eating food from my garden for weeks. You know, from the chive to fiddleheads. The fiddleheads is too old now, too big to eat. But yeah, lots of different stuff. You know, hostas and yeah.
I know you're much more than a single medium artist. You do photography and other things. What are any other projects you're working on right now?
I've been actually making a lot of short films.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, check out my YouTubes. You probably have some of you already seen, you know, the foraging, like how to get food from the wild, and how to garden, and my potatoes in the garden. I did one on potatoes, on chives, on the herbs, and the food from the backyard, and yeah, and it's really a lot of fun, actually.
And what's on your mind, writing wise? What have you been? What kind of what poems have you been working on?
Today I just posted one on fungi. I think both ways are right, and so it's just amazing. You know, I did one on virus, and I did one on fungus, and you know, just different nature. So my next book of poetry will be The River in Our Blood. And so it's for the nature, for the earth, for all the life on earth. And we're just part of the network of life, right? Ecosystem, you know.
Right.
We can never, you know, unfortunately, the corporate, like agriculture, corporate, industrial system, just like, you know, the foundation is how to conquer and how to exploit nature, right? Including ourselves. This COVID-19 really reveals, right? You know, it's nothing but exploitation, money first, life second, you know? Yeah, so, yeah, I also created Who Put Food on the Table. You know, so a lot of people have been requesting to join, and you know, just like really try to just see like to just peel off the masks, right? What's, you know, the so-called freedom, you know, freedom of speech or the democracy, you know, within the infrastructure of the corporation and capitalism it's a lot of lies.
Yes.
You know, but it took me
growing
up in China, seeing through the lies of communist lies, then coming to America, seeking for like the other truths, right? And now I see like the other lie, right? So I have a lot of comparison,
right?
You know, but you know, even though it is very dark, I can never, I still see, like, I put my hope into people, into poetry, into poets and artists like you guys, and also to the people, and also in the life itself. You know, life is just so tenacious, right? If you look at every like fiddle, every fern, every tree, every plant, every potato, you know, and every bird and every worm, right? And how beautiful they are and how strong, right? Just like the fungus, right? You know, the mushroom, right? This fragile looking mushroom, like, you know, can lift like 4,000 pounds of asphalt, right? You know, and come out, right? And under our feet, under the ground, just it's like entire world of this network, like computer network, right? You know, and it's just, I'm just amazed every minute, you know, every second, you know.
Do you have your fungi poem with you tonight?
I can, it's on my computer. I can just go to my
It
computer.
might be fun to reveal
Yeah,
it
I would
tonight.
love to read it.
Okay.
Actually. Should I read this first?
Yes, let's do it. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I was thinking of making another film, and hold on. Okay. It's called, can you see me still?
Yes.
Okay. Food for gods. Do you know fungi? Have you tasted their flesh? Do you know what you see is their flower? What you eat, their genital? Do you feel their body mass under your feet, running wild like rivers and fires? Do you know it's the oldest life on earth? The tallest, fastest, strongest, and vastest. Alive in soil, water, air, Antarctica, lava, in our nose, mouth, throat, intestines, anus. Do you know their ratio? Of every plant on earth, there are 10 more fungal species. Do you know your pillow contains 500,000 fungal spores? A puffball has 7 trillions. Have you seen its mycelia web spreading several miles in a thimbleful of soil? Have you read that they hold 90% weight of a forest? Do you believe forests can live without bird or human, but starve to death without fungi? Have you watched them eat dead leaves, trees, and rocks, turning debris into food for plants? Do you know how they break down plastic, styrofoam, and fracking goo in weeks? Do you know without fungi, we would be crushed under debris, drowning in toxins? Have you watched them eat dead leaves? Oh, sorry, it's moving. Do you know without fungi, we would be crushed under debris, drowning in toxins? Have we ever thanked these invisible decomposers, makers of life? Have you tested their strength? Watched a shaggy mane lifting 400-kilogram asphalt? Have you read the story of Earth? How these quantum fungi transformed a basalt globe into a green earth, together with virus and bacteria. Do you hear them sing, moan, dance in our guts, telling us what to eat, how to feel? Do you feel their pulse, slow, fast, up, down, leveling bread, brewing beer, wine, making medicine, dropping LSD, lifting us to gods? Have you watched them dancing in clusters on trees under moonlight? Have you brought them to your nose, inhaling their fragrance of 5 elements? Are you yet in awe after witnessing them rise from fires, floods, storms, plagues, wars, like warriors, artists, singers, scientists, Taoist masters? Do you know 216 species of fungi are hallucinogenic and millions still unknown as dark taxa, humming as messengers between gods and earthlings? Scientists just mapped their DNA. We are only 1 molecule away from fungi. And how Chinese know for thousands of years, naming them Lingzhi, magic shrooms for healing and love, for reaching immortality, sages and gods. Yes, they are 4 foods from gods, for gods, key to other dimensions. They are us, our body, a kingdom of fungi, virus, bacteria, a forest of symbiont. So be fungi, be humans, be gods, transformers of elements, artists of earth, poets of life.
Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I
Does
think we
anybody
can
want?
use.
Why
Go
don't you
ahead.
start a conversation with the people there about what you just read?
Yeah.
I was just struck with the forest can live without us, but can't live without.
No, they will die very quickly without fungi.
I just think there's a wonderful book, The World Without Us,
Right.
that deals with that. It's essays, and to me, it's a really interesting way of looking at the world,
Mm-hmm.
and minimizing, in a certain sense, the human, even though the human, you are writing the poem about it, so it's, and praising it.
Right.
Who would praise the fungi? You know what I mean? Without us, but
Right.
the forest can live certainly without us. And
Right.
so it's right. It's our relationship. It's really, really, really interesting. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Yes.
I was struck by the use of lists. I like
Lists.
lists. I like poems that use lists,
Yes.
like Whitman's Song of Myself. Or
Oh, that's such a great
Ripples.
poem. Yeah.
And I was thinking of Ammon's poem, The Sleep Garbage.
Ah,
He wrote a whole book.
Right.
on garbage. Yeah.
Garbage.
Right. That was the title of the book, I think.
That was the title of the
It's
book.
amazing. I have to get hold of that book, The Garbage. Yeah.
There's
I-
two.
I'm sorry.
Well, there's two great anthologies on eco poetry.
Yes.
One is called Eco Poetry Anthology, and the other one, and that I've been reading, and the other one is Black Nature, and that's really, really interesting to give yet another perception of how a tree is not just a tree. A tree has history, or
Yes.
the image of a tree has history, and especially in this country.
Right.
So I think it's so important today what you're
Right.
doing.
Right. Yeah, because I've been thinking of actually I'm brewing up another poem on the stem, right? The stem, the trunk. The stem is the tree trunks and a lot of plants, right? What they need to grow their stem, and the stem, what's its relationship to cells, and it's just amazing, the stems and the rhizome, the so-called roots, right? Of a lot of plants, and actually are the stems that run vertical, horizontal underground. They are not roots, but they are stems.
I was amazed at your ability to go deeply into biology. I could see a little bit of botany there. And before coming to I'm ashamed to say, I read your bio and researched you more and got to know your background. And so I wasn't surprised that you could pull apart a mushroom. I just got through eating lots of mushrooms.
Oh, they're amazing. Eat a lot of them.
I ate their.
It's so good for you.
I ate their all their intestines.
Yeah.
I ate their poop and all, and you were there reading. I'm like, oh my God. So tell me how your background, your academic background, that is all over the place, like the different genres you write.
Right.
Tell me about the influence of that other background on your writing.
Right. Well, I have a PhD in comparative literature, right? And that's all theory. That's all in the head, you know. But then I've tried to pull it back to the ground. So my PhD thesis is on the foot binding.
Okay.
On what?
Foot
Foot binding.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
And that is the only scholarly book I have. And actually, that book is my bestseller, and ironically, and made the most money of all the other 13 books. The poetry and fiction and novels, you know, children books. But about 10 years ago, 2008,
Mm-hmm.
Being a mother of 2 young kids and full-time professor and full-time writer and traveling and, you know, raising kids, I was just in so much pain all the time. I was just so stressed out, right? And so I had to, like, I depend on my acupuncture doctor. Just sometimes I have to see him twice a day. So he finally got so sick of me, you know, he really cared about me. Then just dragged me to his like acupuncture technique class, which is 400, the highest level class. And I said, this is crazy, you know, like, you want me to put needle in my body already? That's for the graduation level, right? He said, you know how to do it, just do it, right? And so I got hooked. You know, I learned how to put needles in my own body. And then I just took one class and another, you know, so it took me 9 years, right? For 9 years, I have no Saturdays, right? I just go there and take classes and do my internship, you know. So I graduated with the Chinese medicine degree, and half of the classes actually are Western medicine. And my interest is on the mental health, neurology, you know, the mental health, of course, you know, and it's the brain, right? And the pain, you know, and the poetry. So I designed a lot of classes, like, you know, the pain and poetry, like why poetry can keep us alive, right? Can reduce so much of our pain, right? Then I went on into studying quantum physics. That's when I got really on fire, because just the quantum physics, the theory, I really take quantum physics. You know, if you think about it, the quantum physics is like everything is entangled, everything happens all the time and connected everywhere and all the time, right? And the poetic metaphor is basically functions like quantum, like in the same realm of quantum physics, right? You know, we connect time and space through metaphors, right? And everything actually comes down to this connection of life and the universe, you know. And then when I discovered that, like, you know, I just, like, what can stop me, right? You know, everything is connected. Biology, you know, medicine, physics, right? Poetry, linguistics, you know, story, you know, our brain is the most marvelous thing nature has created, you know, and we were born to be poets, to be artists, and our memory. And in the end, like, the last class I designed before I was forced out was, like, it's called Migration, Immigration, and Home, right? And I just brought in everything. I brought in biology, poetics, the Bible, the first Chinese anthology of, you know, poetry, and the earth, the geology, geography, the migration, you know, immigration. And it's extremely ambitious, but, you know, and I also have to fight, all the daggers and the bullets, aiming at me. But
could I interrupt you to, I want to keep the conversation going, but I would love to hear another poem if we could. Is there something else you could read right now?
Sure. What would you like to hear? About, I actually just open to the circling home.
Great.
Would you like to hear that poem?
I'd love that. And we have more time to discuss, but I wanted to get some more poetry read. So yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. 回家, circling home. Every Chinese belongs to 老家, our native land, ancestor, our food, name, spirit, roots. 老, old, origin. Over the head is 土, earth, and the plow cutting through ground to make home. Every Chinese wants to go home, 回老家, go back to old home, or simply go home, no matter how far we wander. At 14, I left home on the big island of the East China Sea. I worked in a fishing village for the 1 in a million chance to go to college. I never returned. 3 years later, I left the village to study English in Hangzhou. I never returned to the island. I left Hangzhou for Beijing University. My college dream came true at 22. I left China in 1986 to pursue my PhD at NYU. I never returned. Go back home, Americans scream from streets, colleges, social media. Still, I never went back. I drift farther away from Weihai, my 老家, carrying that old earth in my dream. Shanghai is my birthplace. Zhoushan Archipelago, 舟山群岛, is where I grew up, still till 17. I studied English in Hangzhou and Beida. I earned my master's and PhD at NYU. As a foreigner, I taught poetry 20 years as an English professor at an elite college, the only and last miracle. I have raised my sons, trained poets and writers. My old home is still registered as Shandong, Weihai, my 老家, my earth, 土, my heart, 心, my liver, 肝. For Chinese, the liver stores blood and the heart moves it, a circuit of paths leading to one destination, home. At night, the blood must go home to restore the soul and settle the spirit. If it can't go home, we have a problem, insomnia. At 50, I took my sons to the Yellow Sea. It was our first time to see 老家. Factories and buildings have taken over the land my father talked about every day. The wheat fields are gone, the village is gone, the sand beach is gone. My grandma's grave still stands in the yam fields. I sit down in front of her stone and everything floods up. Sorrow, joy, bitter, sweet, her stories, handmade bread, noodles and dumplings, my father roaming on the island in search of the immortal reishi mushroom, 灵芝, his longing to back home, to go home, 回家. I watch my sons eating steamed bread, strung together like beads with a red thread. It is their first time to eat this traditional food, but they devour it as if it had been their daily meal since birth, as if they were slurping Cheerios and milk. This is the bread my father craved while living on the island, while sailing the East China Sea as a commander. Return, 回, a mouth within a mouth. Is that why there is a Chinese restaurant wherever there are Chinese? Just so we could go back home through our food. Is that how my sons are tied to their 老家 in China, even though they were born in New York City and Minneapolis, love pizza, play hockey and baseball, speak English, Hebrew, and Chinese. I check the dictionary. 回, return, go home, by walking, traveling, wandering on earth, carrying mouse, 回, on the traveler's back, 回. I remember my DNA test by National Geographic. 200,000 years ago, my ancestors walked out of Africa, crossing the land and sea, following food, hunting, gathering, making home along their paths, reaching South China after 100,000 years. I remember my father left home at 16 to fight the Japanese invasion, lived and died on the island in the East China Sea. But in his heart, home is forever Weihai by the Yellow Sea. Just like monarchs, geese, salmon, elephants, weeds, and other life on earth, traveling thousands of miles to follow food, but always know how to go back, 回老家. Home is a transit word, 回, return, go home. I keep digging. I need to find the origin. What I found makes my hair stand up. In the old version of Chinese, when words were carved on the bones of birds and whales, on the backs of turtles, 回 equals water equals water rippling, pushing, whirling, circling towards home. Home is embedded in the water. Going home is embedded in running water. When Chinese see the word 回, we have already arrived. My heart feels at home finally. We are water, born to move, wander, migrate, whirl, circle. No need to get mad when people shout, go home at us. We all carry home in our heart and liver, in our blood, in our DNA, as we flow from continent to continent, from sea to sea, to appease the soul, to circle back home. 回, 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 回. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you talk a little bit about the role of the artist and the writer during difficult times like we're going through?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think it's in crisis, we're forced to strip everything, to strip all the decor and the fake and unnecessary things, and just face the most basic, the most fundamental, which is also the language itself, right? And I think as a poet and a writer, we have to do this task every time we sit down and write. And every time we see things, we look at the world and hear the sounds and hear the words, you know, we can never just pretend or the fake things or just let things slip by, right? Even though and we have to be vulnerable all the time, to have to be open, and it makes us very vulnerable, and it brings us a lot of pain, but that also takes us to the world, to the truth and the world that a lot of people can't reach, and that is, for me, it's the joy, right? And the song, the song of, you know, of writing and reading and thinking and facing the ultimate truth, right? And so poetry actually has saved my life, and many times, and keeps me alive and in touch with the world, right? And the poetry keeps us conscious, That's very, very important to me. And in Chinese, they would say, 众人独睡我独醒, right? When everyone is asleep, right, or is acting like a zombie, the poet alone is awake, right? That makes us very lonely and a lot of times very in pain, a lot of pain, but also it connects us. That's the only path to joy to me, you know. And you all know that, I know, right?
You,
So,
do you like short lines?
sometimes I write in, you know, I write in sonnets and the Chinese, traditional Chinese, very technical Chinese versions, like, you know, it's a very strict, like we have 七律五律, so each line has 5 words, each line has 7 words, and the Chinese is a tonal language, right? It's very musical. So within the line, like you cannot have like one tone, right? Say like my name is Wang, like Wang 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 Wang. So it has to be just has variations. You cannot have Wang 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 or the Wang, the 5 words. It has to be just mixed with, you know, 2 different tones to create the music. And then the line, the top line and the bottom line has to be compatible and has to sing and dance to each other. So you can just imagine, you know, the difficulty, but it comes very natural, you know, naturally, because when we sing, when we write poetry, when we sing and dance and walk, right, and move our body and limbs, we never think, is it lining up, right? We just do it, right? And after we it becomes our second nature, you know, and we do it without thinking, right? And that's another thing is like our brain is not just in the head, but it's actually spread through our like spine, just it's the web, right? And our muscle has so much memory, our bones has memory, our blood has memory, you know, and as a poet, we live the life of poets, right? We are poetry ourselves, right? And we're born to be that, you know, and our brain is wired to be artist, to be poet, to be writer, to tell a story, to be a dancer, to be a singer all the time, you know. And actually the public education, I watched my son grow up, you know, sadly, it's like we were born with all the potentials, all the windows and doors of potential and creativity. The public education, actually, the job is just shut them down one by one until only one window and one door is left open, right? And one path for you to walk, you know. So
and when I hear you read, I feel a lot of the words in my body. And can you talk about word choice? Is that something that you want people to feel?
Yes, music is number one. And then when I compose a poem, you know, the words just sing, right? You know, the words have to sing first, right? And then they have to have colors, you know. And but of course, whatever it is, have to follow the story. Everything always comes down to how to tell a good story, right? And even the lyrical poem tells a good story to me, you know. So my form always follows the content, right? And so often the content decides, like, if it should be or Ghazal or Chinese traditional poetry, prose poem. I write a lot of prose poems, which is narrative takes over, like the circling home, 回家, going home, that piece. That's a typical like collage narrative and prose poem format, which is a lot of fun. But I also enjoy writing lyrical poem. And I'm
Anybody else have a question out there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I want to ask, how has American literature influenced your writing?
The freedom and the language, actually. And when I started, I started writing by accident. I walked into Louis Walsh. You all know Louis Walsh, right? The poet, the New York School poet, Louis Walsh. No? Okay. Well, do you know Anne Waldman?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, Anne Waldman first married to Louis Walsh. Louis Walsh was her first husband. And then one day, like 1987, yes, 88 actually. So I was graduating from Long Island University, and I was majoring in the English literature. I was supposed to take 18th century Clarissa, 18th century English literature, and I knew it's kind of boring, but
Thank you.
well, it's pretty good. I like that.
Boring, actually.
I shouldn't diss.
Oh,
It's
no,
just the way it was taught. I think I find it's really boring.
And you had a friendship with I just lost my train of thought. Allen Ginsberg, no?
Oh yeah, that's the story I'm going to tell
Okay.
you. Yeah, so I walked into the classroom thinking this would be the 18th century British literature. And then I saw Louis Walsh. I didn't know who he was. He was just looking like crazy. His hair just so wild and long and graying. And he was wearing two shirts. Both shirts are misbuttoned, right? And he has white like paint all over from head to toe, and I just thought, who's this professor, right? And I sat down, and turned out to be like a creative writing class. And this is the only creative writing class that I walked in by chance. And I was curious, and I just said, all right, let me try to write a story. Then I will quit and go to the real class, the British literature class. And then Professor Walsh wrote on the story, said, you should start writing a novel. So that is like the Rinpoche like hit me with a whack me on the head. He said, this is like what you're supposed to do, right? And I stayed in that class, and I got an A, and everyone got an A, and I was really mad. I thought I was the genius, right? And then at the end of the workshop, I was one day that was close to Christmas. The department had a Christmas party for all students and faculty. And I didn't know, I just walked to the library to do writing. And then I bumped into Professor Walsh, and he said, let's go to the party. Then he gave, he said, what do you want to drink? And I said, well, just orange juice. And he made himself like screwdriver, and it looks exact the same, right? And somehow he gave me the screwdriver, and he took my orange juice, and I don't drink, and I get like drunk very quickly. So I think I was drunk, and I started dissing the stupid English literature. You can just the literary analysis, you can use the same theory, and you can come up with like totally different conclusions, right? And I just thought, just like, why study literature? Why just create literature? And Professor Walsh said, yes, 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 And then the next day he called me, said, Allen Ginsberg is looking for a translator and interpreter. He's bringing like the first group of Chinese poets, like Bei Dao and Gu Cheng, Yang Lian, right, to America, and he's looking for an interpreter. And would you be interested? I said, yes. So that's how I started working with Allen Ginsberg. And through the translation, and actually I was really lucky to be a poet, right? Translation is the best reading, the deepest, and reading and writing, actually.
I'm going to pause you there, Ping, because I want to, next time we're going to have you back soon and we're going to finish that story, but I want to make sure we have time for you to read one more.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Let me finish that quickly.
Yes.
Then after that, that's how and when I started writing poetry. At the end of the festival, Allen took us to his home for a party. And then Allen, the Chinese poets asked him, about the tanka over on the wall above his bed, right? And Allen just started shouting like how Chinese government like killed all the monks and burned all the temples. And then suddenly he just started, so what the fuck do you know, right? And I said, Allen, I'm translating for you. I'm volunteering, I'm starving, to do this work for you. Why are you cussing at me? And then Allen realized he got carried away. So he came back with a pile of his precious books and started drawing like Buddha and lotus and and stars. Then he said, my apology for yelling about Buddha. And that's how we became good friends.
Nice. Great story.
He pointed my path to Tibet, actually. That's when I decided I'm going to find out what Tibet is. And so as soon as I got my green card, I went to Tibet,
Nice.
So,
thank you for finishing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's hear one more poem.
Okay. I will just read Things We Carry on the Sea. It's about, this book, My Name Is Immigrant, is really a song and an ode to immigration, to migration, to life, right? And now the essential workers who provide us the most important, like the food and and other stuff, they are carried out by immigrants. And a lot of the essential workers are immigrants, actually. Yeah. So things we carry on the sea. We carry tears in our eyes. Goodbye, father. Goodbye, mother. We carry soil in small bags. May home never fade from our hearts. We carry names, stories, memories of our village, our civilization. We carry scars from proxy wars of greed. We carry carnage of mining, droughts, floods, genocides. We carry dust of our families, incinerated in mushroom clouds. We carry our islands sinking under the sea. We carry our hands, feet, bones, hearts, and best minds to start a new life. We carry diplomas, medicine, engineer, nurse, education, math, poetry, even if they mean nothing to the other shore. We carry railroads, plantations, laundromats, taco trucks, farms, factories, nursing homes, hospitals, schools, temples, built on our ancestors' backs. We carry old homes along the spine, new dreams in our chests. We carry yesterday, today, and tomorrow. We are orphans of the wars forced upon us. We are refugees of the sea, drowning in plastic wastes. We came from the same mother in Africa. We are your children, sisters and brothers, father and mother. Our tongues carry the same weight as we chant. I, Hub, Libra, Amor, love, Ping An, Salam, Shalom, Paz, Peace, 希望, Amal, Hafnam, Esperanza, hope, 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 as we drift from dream to dream, sea to sea. Thank you.
Wow.
Beautiful.
I wish we were all there in that beautiful yard. We could continue this.
Yeah, with the birds.
And how
Oh,
come
yeah.
Birds, the music of the birds and your music. you know.
And how come it's still daylight?
Oh, well, we're pretty close to the longest, the summer solstice, you know, and
What?
it's 7, we are 1
Oh
hour.
yeah, you 1 hour behind. I used to,
Yes.
okay.
It's 7:52
Yeah,
here.
Well, King, what would you like to leave us with? We're you know, coming down to the end of the hour here. So what advice do you have for writers and people who
I
love
would say
peace and you know, to stay true to themselves here in this difficult time? What's your message for us?
well, just trust yourself, you know, and trust ourselves, and stay connected with ourselves, and we are part of nature, and writing is our center, you know. Just keep writing no matter what, and once we can center ourselves and connect with ourselves, we are immediately connected with nature. We are never alone, you know. We are always connected, and time like this is precious, right? So, you know, let's just keep in touch and keep talking to each other. And even when we're not connected through Zoom or through Facebook, or, you know, our thoughts, right, are always entangled. So I'm always with you and you're always with me. And but at the same time, if you want to talk with me, just give me a shout through Facebook. I think we're all Facebook friends. And anytime, I will always respond to you. And it always makes me happy.